My interest in tech was I really wanted to build something great. I made the bold decision to just quit my job. I was still at Bugatman at this time. So we actually quit our jobs and we moved into now my co-founder Kuria's bedroom. So of course, both our parents were like really unhappy. Like, why are you leaving architecture? It's a very stable job. The one thing which we knew early on was if you don't commit to something full time, then it never really takes off. In 2021, about a year and a half into building it, we actually had it sold for $80,000. And it was like our first big breakthrough. We were like, man, I think this thing actually makes sense. So we built the first version of what Chpter is today in about 6 weeks. And in like 8 weeks, we got our first customer. And that was almost a religious experience for us. So we made 23 shillings, I kid you not, 23 shillings. And we were like, man, I think we're actually going to become rich now. Like, it was like the best 23 shillings we ever made.
Right. Hey guys, a happy new year. I hope your year started off to a great start. I hope you're making money already and making great financial decisions. Hopefully, the decisions all the things you decided to do in December are not coming to roost right now in January. As usual, this podcast is proudly brought to you by Chpter. You can spice up your financial portfolio with Chpter. Learn about how you can take advantage of the global market. All this information is available in the description box. Please click on the description box. You can open up and you can able to have classes online in some locations in Tanzania and in Uganda. You can have physical classes and you can learn how to trade and how to make more money with your extra income. Chpter is your trusted broker. And now we will go to our money story. So today I have with me a visionary designer, builder, and problem solver who is passionate about leveraging technology to drive business growth in Africa. Mark, you're welcome to Financial Incorrect.
Thank you so much.
Yeah?
Glad to be here.
Are you nervous? You've come after your co-founder, Tesh. Do you think your story will do better than his? Do you think people are more keen to hear yours than his?
I know, man. I think I've only done like one other podcast besides the one we ran together. I think
Yeah.
with Spice FM. So I'm just curious to see how this will do.
Yeah.
I've been looking at this one and the comments, people saying like nice things. So I'm just curious to see what people will say. Hopefully they learn something.
Do you think you have an unusual money story?
For sure. For sure. I think the journey to getting here is a very unusual one.
Yeah.
Just starting out from, what I did in school to like what I'm doing now. I don't think I'd have even predicted that.
You'd have ended up here.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we get into your money story or your money journey, let me ask you a couple of, I ask my guests usually a couple of questions from, anywhere, obscurity almost. What do you think is the best secret on earth?
Oh my gosh. Hey, this question is usually not easy. The best secret on earth.
Which is the best secret on earth?
On the top of my mind right now, I'd say the best secret on earth is whatever you want will definitely happen. It will probably just take longer than you think and probably be twice or thrice more expensive than you had initially thought. But if you stick at something long enough, whatever it is, it actually does happen.
Yeah. Okay. In your 29 years of living, that's been your experience. If you stick at something long enough.
I think I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it with many people, even some of my mentors. There's one of my mentors, actually my landlord. He's like 70, super wealthy. So he was saying, he was telling me as a joke, if I wanted to, I'd have had a chopper or like a jet right now. It's just, I just didn't dream it. So I didn't get it. But if I dreamt it, I'd have gotten it. So I think the insight there was, if you dream it, like that's where the mistake can happen. If you don't really dream it, if you don't really like put it in your mind as something you want to get and of course work towards it, that's obviously something you need to do, then maybe you won't achieve it. So the danger is in maybe not dreaming big enough.
Yeah. I read this book, well, now by the time this episode goes up, like it will have been months ago, and essentially was just, I think challenging the fact that we now live in a world where we don't pursue secrets anymore. We think, it's sort of like we live in a place where we're in a really comfortable element. We're not trying to make things any better and things like that. It was really interesting. I guess it also came from I saw, I think this must have been like a week ago now, or maybe 2 weeks ago. The president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, talking about how, in the I don't remember the exact year that the US and the USSR were able to take someone to space, but he was referencing the fact that they did it so many years ago. We are
Okay.
now like X years as Africans or
Yeah.
as an African
Yeah.
continent, and we still haven't done
Haven't
it.
done it.
I thought it was really interesting, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that we push the envelope just to be curious about
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Actually, that's something I believe in a lot.
Yeah.
Elon talks about it a lot. I think when I was younger, I thought, like brands really rule the world, but I've come to see people actually rule the world. And the reason why I'm saying that is in Elon's book, he was talking about after the Kennedy administration in the US, like that's when like the US went to space. There's a lot of exploration and doing hard things. And it's for some reason, even as the greatest nation, the US, they actually regressed in technology. So it's not until what SpaceX is doing over the past 10 years that they were able to go to space again, they were able to redesign some of those rockets. So I think the lesson there is innovation doesn't just happen. People have to be there and actually push for that innovation. You need people to actually say, okay, Africa has never taken anything, maybe a rocket to the moon, so we're going to make it happen. If no one does that, then you can't expect it to just happen.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. What do you think is the greatest business that isn't being built right now in Kenya?
Yes, okay, it's interesting. The greatest business that isn't being built.
That isn't being built right now, yeah.
My goodness. The greatest business that isn't being built.
I mean, if you think about your everyday experience as a Kenyan and, different things you interact with, whether it's paying for things, whether it's, roads, driving, whatever the case is, like, what do you think is a really good business idea that nobody is building right now or nobody is looking into?
I think that's a good question. I'd say I wouldn't say like an individual business idea. I'd say just the opportunities. So I'd say like if you build a service business, if it's a restaurant or if it's something like even a gym, there's a lot of opportunity to build a big business, I'd say, in the service industry. And why I'm saying this is the quality in Kenya right now is so mediocre, right? Like we've gotten used to, like if someone gives you, really good service in a restaurant or really good service, even in an Uber, you feel so good, you even want to tip them, right? But you find so many businesses are just doing bare minimum. So if you just come and raise the bar, just give people a quality service, you find like that's something that's actually going to do really well. So I think as Kenyans, we've gotten used to like really poor service.
Yeah.
So anyone in the service industry, if you can just come and you treat your customers really, really well, you'll build a very sticky business that can become big.
Do you think the better business value proposition there is to build a service business and provide better service than everyone else? Or is it to build a business around improving businesses' services and showing how that can affect their bottom line?
I think it's, I'd say giving better service. Let's just look at an industry that's very evolved, like banking. Like what's your relationship with your bank, right? Like if the bank just you're able to transfer money, you're able to save, and you're able to withdraw your money. Like that's not proper service. That's just the bank doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like proper service is them making sure that you're able to see success. When you have a problem, you're treated really well. So I think there's opportunity around doing more than what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? Like which bank makes you feel like, okay, like this guy is really, really valuing me as a customer. I think there's many Kenyans who haven't had that experience yet. So if you're able to build any business and doing your job is not like, like doing, it's like if someone opens, if I'm a guard and I open the door for you, I'm a gate man.
Yeah.
You can't say that's quality service. That's the job to be done.
Yeah.
So it's like what you do above that makes it a quality service.
Yeah.
So I think any entrepreneur, any business that does that little bit extra can really win.
Okay, interesting. Tell me a little bit about Chpter. I guess what you're building now, where you're a co-founder right now, and what you guys are trying to achieve, and what the journey's been like so far.
Oh, interesting. So we started Chpter in actually 2020. Funny story, we were still in school that time. We were studying architecture then with my co-founder, Korea. So we saw, okay, like, let's just start a business after school. We're not going to go back into corporate, into employment. We're going to start a business.
And this was your undergrad or your master's?
This was undergrad.
Okay.
Undergrad. So interesting story there. We were doing architecture. So studied architecture, University of Nairobi and University of Pescara in Italy. And we were just like, okay, this tech thing is really kicking off. I think that time we were reading books from Steve Jobs from Apple. There was even Spiegel and Snapchat and Brancheski and Airbnb. And there was this name called like accidental billionaires. People didn't really think tech would be a big thing, but so there are many. I think Mark Zuckerberg had just hit like $1 billion in net worth. And we were like, damn, there's an opportunity to build something in tech. So we formed the company Chpter, and we really didn't know what to do with it for like about 6 months because we were still in school. So finished school.
What was the purpose? I mean, so when you're founding Chpter at the time, what was the thinking? What was the idea?
Yeah, there's this actually a good question. There's this article I found that time that was speaking about AI. And it's not the AI we have now, like large language models. It was more of like analytical AI. I don't know if you remember that time. There was AI that can predict if this is a cat, if this is a shoe, if this is a bag. There's that type of AI. And from that article, I was just saying this can really be the future, right? So from that article, you were like, okay, let's try and see what we can be able to do in the tech space. And we sought out to build Chpter initially to help real estate developers be able to predict sort of like which housing they can be able to build dependent on the location, because AI was very predictive. That was the AI that was being run that time. You can be able to create a model where if I want to build in Westlands, it can tell me how much office space should I put, how much retail space should I put, how much residential space should I put. So that's initially what we wanted to build. Of course, we didn't know how hard it's going to be. And that evolved into so many things. Like 4 years later now, where what Chpter does now is we assist businesses to be able to turn on social media as a revenue generating engine. So what this means is we've built AI that you can wrap on your Instagram and your WhatsApp. So you know how when you text a business now on Instagram, they might not be able to respond immediately because maybe they're handling so many DMs. So Chpter can automatically respond to all those customers, and we know what that business is selling. So the AI can be able to guide that customer all the way to making a sale. So if you're asking on DMs or on WhatsApp, do you have this pair of shoes? It can be able to respond, share the images, share the sizes, share the colors, and a customer can be able to actually check out and pay on WhatsApp. So that's sort of like what Chpter does now. But as you continue on, I'll unpack like ideally or the journey of how we got here.
Okay. So but essentially it's also what Chpter does so it can do the same on WhatsApp, it does that on IG.
Yes.
And it can take a consumer from inquiry to completing a sale does it, for example, on if you're using M-Pesa, does it or can it verify M-Pesa transactions? So like, you know how I guess a lot of online consumers will say, please send us the code once you've paid. Yeah,
it can be able to do that. So the beautiful thing is we're helping the business have like a checkout and payment channel on their WhatsApp. So when that customer is chatting with that business, they can make that payment on WhatsApp, and that will be seen on the business side.
Right.
So all these things like, send the message, send the code that you got from M-Pesa.
Yeah.
It's not necessary now because all that history will be recorded on WhatsApp. And we realized that this was really powerful because platforms like WhatsApp are actually a very good storage and search engine if you think about it. So if you want to remember something you sent, your wife, your mom, your brother a few months ago, you can go to the chat and you can see all the information that you shared with them. So this also works really well for the business because they can have all the information on a particular customer there. They can see exactly what they asked. They can see if they like started or like they were lost somewhere. And also myself as a consumer on this side, if I want to verify anything, I can just search the name of the business on my WhatsApp chat and I can be able to see, okay, here is the receipt, here is the order, here is what I actually paid for. So it's a very nice platform to sort of like have everything in one place.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I guess let's get into your journey now. Let's talk a little bit about how you ended up here and how you've ended up even co-founding Chpter. Do you think it was more a pursuit of purpose or more a pursuit of money?
Good question. I think it was more of a pursuit of purpose. So, studied architecture now, University of Nairobi, and actually did really well because I got a first class in here in the University of Nairobi. Studied in University of Pescara as well in Italy.
Was that
got
an
a job.
undergrad as well or a master's?
The undergrad now.
Both of, I mean,
They're both like undergrads, but it's like you get 2 degrees.
Okay, interesting. And is it a collaborative, like, is it an agreement between the 2 universities, or is it something you pursued?
There is an agreement between the 2
Okay,
universities.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So why would they give you anyway? Okay.
Yeah, we wanted the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like one is architecture, the other one is architectural studies, where you do your thesis.
Okay.
So it's like a bit more advanced. Actually, in other universities, they call it a master's.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Anyway, all right.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
So when I came back, I actually got a job by an architectural firm called Bugatman and Partners. It's the largest architectural firm in Africa. So I was still in school this time. And, at that time, you're like, man, I think I'm doing really well as a student. I also have a job, so you're balancing school and work. And I got
And
to
what were
work.
you doing in school at this time?
So I was still doing architecture.
Oh, so you got hired before you finished?
Before I finished,
Okay.
exactly. So this was the last 2 years I already had a job. So I got to, design some buildings. I think Bugatman is behind some projects here in Kenya, such as 2 Rivers, UAP Towers, some really big projects. And also in South Africa, they did like the FNB Stadium, which hosted the World Cup, some really good projects there. So I think when I was in Bugatman, I started thinking, damn, like the ceiling for me could be a bit low because I could just look like 10 years on and probably I'll still be here. Maybe I'll be a director, but I felt like there's more I could do, right? So I really felt like I've sort of like done my best in architecture. So the question was, where can I be able to go next? So I had a really, really strong passion for tech. Actually, in uni, there's a company we started with some friends of mine, which was more like what Shopzetu is today. So
Shopzetu.
what Shopzetu is today. That time we were trying what Shopzetu and Glovo are now. So we'd aggregate merchants into one platform, like small businesses. We give them a website, and we give them a way for them to start selling online. So it was called Easy. We built it, but of course it failed. We were not so serious about it, and in some way, all the co-founders of that business, we went to different countries. So one person went to Australia, another person went to the US. I got this opportunity, Italy and South Africa. So that's just how the business like didn't take off. So it's like, let me try something in tech again. And now joined forces with my co-founder, who was my classmate also in school. So we were like, immediately we graduate, we'll quit our jobs, which wasn't easy. So we graduated in September of 2020. Actually, the journey begins a lot earlier. So that year when we incorporated Chpter, we knew we wanted to go into tech. This was early January. So, when you do architecture, it's a very creative course, and it sort of like builds like the right side of your brain. So you stop becoming very analytical. You become more of a problem solver, like a design thinker. So I really felt like I needed to build this analytical side because I wanted to build a fintech, right? So what happened in Feb was I got into London School of Economics. And the plan was to go there, do some finance for like about a year, and then I can come back.
This is for a master's now.
It's for a master's now. Okay. Finally doing a master's so that we can move over, because it's not easy moving from one field to another. So I was like, okay, let me see if I can do a course to learn something new, and then I can move onto this other side of tech, and more specifically fintech. So that happened, got into London School of Economics, but then there was this, disease that was in the Far East in China, and no one knew it's going to become a big thing. So the class was supposed to start in August, right? So preparations are underway, and then of course March, COVID came. We all thought it would last for a month, so the class just kept on getting postponed, and then eventually we noticed, okay, COVID is actually going to stay, so the class actually got cancelled. So when it got cancelled, I was like, okay, what are we actually going to do? How are we going to transition into this fintech world that we really wanted to get into? So in September of that year, I made the bold decision to just quit my job. I was still at Bugatman at this time. And we decided we'll just start from scratch and learn how to code and learn finance. So we actually quit our jobs, and we moved into now my co-founder Courier's bedroom.
His
bedroom.
Where
yeah, exactly.
He had his own flat.
Yes, no, he was actually staying with his parents still.
Okay, so
because this time I think we were about 24 years old.
Right.
So we moved into
Why not
his
move
bedroom.
into your bedroom?
Good question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess his bedroom was a bit bigger. It was a really large room, and then what we did, we pushed the bed to the side.
Yeah.
And then we put 2 desks next to each other.
On the other
I
side.
think we still have that video. And then we said, Chpter has launched. We even recorded a video. So it's so funny. In that video, you'll notice we only pan one direction of the room because the bed is on this other side.
I mean, sorry to cut you at this point, but was that sort of the pursuit of, because this founder story, I mean, a lot of the most successful founders, you're like, started in a garage or started here.
Yeah.
Do you think you were trying to curate that look for yourselves now? Because it didn't sound like you were needed to do it.
I know. I think in some way, yes. Let me say 20% yes, 80% no. I think to some extent, yes, we felt like we wanted to have a good story. But also in a way, one thing which we knew early on was, if you don't commit to something full time, then it never really takes off. So of course, both our parents were really unhappy. Why are you leaving architecture? It's a very stable job. It's what you did for 6 years. Why would you want to go into this thing called tech software? You don't even know how to code. So we really needed to have skin in the game, and just moving into a physical office, and the only office we could afford that time was a bedroom. It sounded like a really good idea. So every morning you can say you're actually going somewhere to work. You're going to work.
Right.
Yeah, so we stayed there for about 3 months, and then Courier's mom actually was kind enough to offer us the SQ. So we got an upgrade. So we upgraded the SQ. So the SQ had 2 rooms and a bathroom. Right, so we put 1 desk. It was really small SQ, so you can only fit 1 desk in either room. So you got 1 desk on this side, the other desk on the other side. So where I was sitting, that was the business side. We'd even meet some customers there, and Courier side was the tech side.
What were you guys doing at that time? What were you even building?
Yeah, so we had a thesis which was, we felt like we could build a solution for real estate developers, ideally to assist developers real estate developers to be able to create projections of how their rental projects are going to work. We realized that for any building you'll see in Nairobi, you'll find that up to 50% of that project is financed by the bank, right? So if that developer or that entrepreneur or that property manager is not able to raise that financing, then you find that project will actually sink. So if you drive along Nairobi, you'll see the mini stalled projects, and it's because of the financing from the bank didn't come through fast enough. So we started there because we actually came from architecture. So we dug deep and we noticed you might be building a real estate project, but the banker who is looking at your thesis or your feasibility study knows nothing about real estate, right? So we built a solution that can assist them to be able to credit score your business plan and be able to easily give you financing. So what we built now assisted this credit analyst to take to take like the verification and the loan origination process from 6 months to like 15 minutes. So it wasn't easy. It took us over a year to do that. And we were coding like day and night, like 16-hour days, because we didn't know how to code. So in the morning, we'd watch coding tutorials on Udemy and lynda.com. In the evening, we code. So that's what we built initially. The future was bright. We knew we were going to be millionaires in like about 9 months. Man, the millions never came. It didn't come soon enough. So we built that, and as we continue building that, we realized that this problem doesn't face like real estate developers alone. It faces many businesses. So if you're a business and you want a loan from a bank, it can take you 6 months to get a loan, because like the bank will take so long to understand your manufacturing business or your agriculture business, all these things. So we built a tool called Karen also, that now assists the banks to be able to like credit score you in like less than 15 minutes. So that's what we built. We were going to like all these banking offices in CBA, ABSA, CDN Bank, and telling them we have a solution that will change the way you guys are scoring businesses. We thought they'll take it up immediately, but selling to banks is like the hardest thing ever. It's like extremely hard. Like before we got to the C-suite guys, it'll take us like something like 3 months. So it was really disheartening. I think those days were like the toughest days ever. You know, I always make this joke, like I'd get like 200 shillings. Of course, you're not earning. So I get 200 shillings from somewhere, and I tell my co-founder Kuri at the time, hey bro, we're rich, man. Let me go buy you a drink. Right? They even send each other 50 shillings.
So I'm assuming at this point, you're still living in your friend's house. So I'm assuming his parents are catering to your.
Yeah, I'm living at home, but the office is in his house.
Oh, so you go back home?
Yeah, I was living at home all this time.
So it was just the office that was in his bedroom.
In his bedroom, exactly.
Okay, but you were living at home.
I was living at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand that. Okay, so your parents are taking care of your expenses.
Exactly.
His parents are taking care of his expenses.
Exactly.
So you're still, you're broke, but you're not suffering.
Yeah, we're not suffering. Yeah, at least our parents are really like making it easier for us to live. But the hard part was, we had jobs before.
Yes.
Right, so it's extremely tough, and at that age, you've graduated. Depending on your parents.
What income
also.
did you guys leave? How much were you being paid at that job? What income did you leave?
I think at that time, by the time I was in fourth year, it was getting close to around 200K.
Okay.
This time I was like 23, 24. So for that age, I think it was fairly good.
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't have so many expenses since I was still living at home. So you can imagine going from that 200K to like zero for like more than a year. So it was like really, really tough.
Okay. Then before you continue with the I guess how you got the banks to eventually convert, what elements did you guys take into place? What data points were you taking in to build this the current solution? What are the things, and how were you able to replicate it across multiple businesses? What are the fundamental things that banks take into consideration when trying to decide whether you're feasible or not for a loan?
Okay. Yeah, good point. So we noticed like banks, for banks to give you a loan, they will need some audited accounts, right? So they'll ask you to get some audited accounts. If you have an auditor like KPMG or Deloitte, then they can be able to do those audited accounts for you. And in these audited accounts, they will check, okay, there's something called a 3-statement model. So they'll check like, okay, what's your balance sheet? What are your cash flows? And then it's balance sheet, cash flows. I'm forgetting the third one.
Okay.
So from that, they can be able to do now scenario analysis and financial forecasting. So they're saying, okay, this business, you're telling us that you're going to hit profitability in year 5. So they'll create like a base case scenario. So if everything goes well, will you be able to hit it? If they'll create a stress case scenario, if things are really bad, maybe you're not able to sell in time, the economy is poor, all these things, they'll create that scenario. Then based on that, they will give you a score. So based on that score, they can see, should we, number one, loan to this business or not? And number two, if we do loan them out, like how much should we give them? And one of the things they usually look out for is they don't want the business to be over-levered. So what that means is you don't want a business that's making maybe $100,000, let's say 10 million shillings a month, and they're paying loans with, they're using 9 million. They have to pay the loan. So it means this business is working to pay the loan, right? So we check for these things in literally like now 15 minutes. We build some algorithms that can check for them. But the manual way, the business, the banker would take maybe like 3 months to be able to decipher all this
Because
information.
essentially, they're physically looking at the reports and everything.
Exactly.
I mean, it sounds like a very valuable solution. Why didn't the banks pick it up?
Yeah, so we actually got it into a demo phase with ABSA and NCBA. We got some mentors who were able to just like show us how to navigate that world. I think it's just we were not patient enough. I think back to the secret. We didn't realize at the time that enterprise sales usually take a very long time, and there's more than one stakeholder that needs to be convinced. So you need to convince, for example, the CFO, you need to convince the chief information, the CIO. You need to actually convince the credit analyst who's going to use it. And there's many cases where the person who's going to use the software is not the person who's going to like pay for it, or the person who's going to approve it. So it's an extremely long sales cycle, and you hadn't foreseen that. And then there's the other thing of, we are like 25-year-olds, we have no credentials. They're like, how are you guys going to give a solution to our bank? So there's a lot of that when we went into some of these meetings. But we did have a breakthrough. So in 2021, about a year and a half into building it, there's a gentleman called Stanley who ran a small loan shop that wanted to acquire the software. So we actually had it sold for $80,000. And it was like our first big breakthrough. Like a year and a half in, we sold this software. We were like, man, I think this thing actually makes sense. So based on that, we sold the software to him, still retained some shareholding in the business. And then it's that's now what we use as a springboard to now launch Chpter. So we decided selling to banks is very hard. You want to have customers who are easier to acquire. And when you were building that first version of Chpter, we realized not every business has audited accounts. Many businesses don't even keep financial transactions in the first place. So it's sort of like pivoted to focus on those businesses and assisting them to be able to see success online.
Yeah. Okay. So was the end goal was always Chpter. So even Karen was it was for you to be able to build Chpter.
Yes.
So you sold the business for $80,000, and then you use that money to begin to build Chpter, and you keep some shares into this micro loaning business. And so even to this, to this date, you haven't pursued selling that solution to any other financial bank or partner.
Not really. There's one time we got approached by another fintech from Zambia who wanted to acquire it to acquire the tech to expand into Kenya. But those discussions didn't go, we were not able to really close because, of course, most of the attention was on Chpter. So we never really focused on that business. We just saw it as a springboard into what we actually wanted to build. Yeah.
So even right now, do you know how long banks are still taking to I guess
the solution?
Is it still the 3 months?
I think there's still an opportunity. They still take way long to be able to give you a loan, and you will provide them with like your audited accounts in Excel or PDF. They will have to import it manually. There's still someone who has to physically look at every single transaction, and it's still very hard for businesses to get loans from banks. So I think it's a problem someone can actually go and focus on and see some success.
Figure out how to solve. Okay. All right, let me take you back a little because you sound very tech oriented, at least interested in it. So what in your childhood created the environment for you to want to pursue tech?
Good question. What in my childhood? I was a pretty strong, I was a bookworm, actually, in primary school. So I really loved reading. Actually, what's funny, I wanted to be a doctor. Can you imagine? I actually wanted to be a doctor when I was young for a long time, all the way through to high school. And my interest in tech was I really wanted to build like something great. So for a long time, I was really focused on like being a doctor, but then the veil was pulled from my eyes when I finished high school. When I started seeing, okay, like I really love this. When I got my first phone, I think it was Ineos. They had just come out. And I was like, yeah, this is really cool. It has so many apps. Who builds these things? And then I was really following the story of Facebook closely. So I'm like, this guy is also called Mark like me. He's built this thing. He's become a billionaire. And then started seeing a lot of, when I now started reading books on these founders,
Yeah.
I really started seeing there's many businesses that are starting, and in like 5 years they're becoming really big with a lot of impact globally.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the tech bug sort of like
hits
started.
you. So it hits you a little later in life.
A little later.
Before we continue, guys, allow me to talk to you about one of our sponsors for today's episode, and that is Loop. Turn your mistakes into financial discipline, and Loop is a partner to help you get a bit more disciplined. Using standing orders, you can ensure that you keep track of your financial goals. You can save for whether it is a gadget, whether it is a trip, whether it is an emergency savings, whatever the case is. Loop can help you do that all with the tap of a button to ensure that when you're called for that guy's trip, when you go out at night and you're having a good time, you don't spend any of the money that you intended to for any of your key financial goals. Loop is a perfect partner to be able to get you from where you are to where you need to be. So download Loop today. Link is in the description box. If you have any further questions, please, you can DM us, or you can let us know, or you can reach out directly to Loop and they will be able to answer it. Remember, why wait? Loop it. What was the environment you grew up in financially like? What were your folks doing? Were you average middle class, regular middle class?
I see.
On the higher end?
I see. I'd say you grew up mostly average middle class. So I'd say the bug for tech came in much later, but the bug for entrepreneurship, that came in a lot earlier. And the biggest cause of that was my mom. So my mom had a fashion business where she'd make clothes for people. So if it's like bridal clothes, if it's clothes for going for a wedding, she had like a team of about 10 people, 7 to 10 people she was working with. So I could really see like the benefits of being an entrepreneur, because when I'd want to be bought for a shoe, I didn't have to wait till like, the end of the month. She'd tell me, let me see if I'll get money today. And I'd hope, I'd bug her and stuff like that. And probably she'd make that money and we can be able to get me something. So I was like, my idea of entrepreneurship that time was, it was one of the ways you could have money on demand or like all the time.
Right.
So I think that bug sort of like started there, and she was really able to spot opportunities quickly, right? If someone came and asked, okay, can you make this? Even if she's never made it before, she'll say, yes, we can make it. And then she can be able to get a team to do it.
Right.
So I saw that thing of just jumping on opportunities to make that extra dollar.
Right. And what did you see from your dad that was contrast, that you were like, no, I prefer the entrepreneurship,
The entrepreneurship side.
And was he in formal employment?
Yeah, my dad was more on the education side. He was very academic. So throughout, let's say like primary school and high school, most of what he was doing was like going in school and learning about. He was actually did a course in CPA and also did BCom. So I was seeing more of the academic side. And I was like, I saw if you go that side, maybe the greatest you could be is probably like a professor or a lecturer. So that I didn't find that quite as appealing as being on this other side where you can have a large team. There's more flexibility in your working hours. I didn't know you actually work more than employed people, but I was really more pulled towards this other side where you can sort of like, those things for be your own boss.
Yeah. Those taglines for entrepreneurship. Okay.
Yeah.
So as a whole, what would you say that you got from your parents about money? What would you say they taught you about money?
Yeah, interesting. And I was having a conversation with this on this another day. I think I've grown into that philosophy for saving like a $10,000. It's let me put it this way: it's easier to find a way of making an extra 10,000 than saving 10,000, right? Like And why I say that is it's always good to be sort of like on the attack and find new ways of like revenue generation. And that's really what entrepreneurship enables you to do. It's about you also creating an engine that can be able to provide value, of course, and it's an engine that generates cash, right? So, sort of like the money philosophy I've been having lately is instead of focusing on like maybe like reducing spend and saving, let me see how I can be able to just generate more money. How can I, invest in myself, invest in other things to just be able to generate more and more money. So I think that's something I was able to see from my parents, from my mom especially, because she would really, really extend herself to just make that extra dollar. So it was sort of like being on the attack as opposed to being on defense.
What's your first conscious memory of dealing with money and understanding that money makes the world go round?
Wow, my first conscious memory. I'd say my first conscious memory was around high school. Around high school, like being in high school, you'd be given like a lot of pocket money.
Yeah.
If you're smart,
For the whole time, yeah.
For the whole time, you're smart, you save it, and then you have a lot more money during the holidays. So my first experience where I saw money can really make the world go round was like when I was able to just save up and buy something for myself. Right, that joy and satisfaction, and I think it was a pair of shoes that I was able to get myself. Really just makes you feel like, damn, I want to be making more money so that I can be able to do things like this. And sort of like what that evolved to was I did the math I want to buy a car for myself in my 20s, and if I'm paid, for instance, like 100,000 shillings a month, I'll have to save for 2 years and maybe like not actually use that money for me to buy a car, right? And I think that's where the philosophy for being on attack came, because I saw it's much easier for me to create a business that generates more money than it is for me to save for like 3 years, 4 years to get something.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I saved for a very long time. I had to be super hard on myself to get these shoes. I don't want to be saving for an extremely long period of time to get anything, to get something.
Right.
So you can just focus on the revenue generation part, just increasing how much you can earn.
Yeah.
And you can be able to get the lifestyle you want.
Okay. Let's talk about this first proper job that you get, the big architecture job, and the money that you were being paid. What were you doing with that money at the time? It sounds like you would have really needed it for the year and a half.
I know.
After that, yeah.
I know. Oh gosh, I was spending it very poorly. Of course, I was spending it really poorly. I think those days, gadgets. Of course, as a young guy, like Apple releases AirPods, you're the first one to get them. They release an Apple Watch, you're the first one to get it. There's a new phone, you're upgrading from the one you have into the next one. So I really spent it in some of those things. Actually, I was not very conscious in saving or investing at the time. And of course, a car, like when things are going well, the first thing you want to do, like as a guy, is like, oh, let me just get a car. So I actually got a Golf when I was about 24, like that time, just before we quit our jobs to begin Chpter. And like, I was just like, man, I can tell my kids I got a car before I was 25. It was actually one of the goals I had. So that's sort of like how I was spending it at the time.
Okay. What do you think the perception of the people around you was when you buy, you're making good money, working as an architect, making good money, buy the car, quit Chpter. Oh no, sorry, quit working and you start working on Chpter, or start working on Karen, which then helps you build Chpter. What do you think the perception of people was you at the time? And are you, during that period, were you trying to keep up appearances by, regularly driving the Golf, regularly driving the car, or did you stop driving it at some point and now you're using matatus, or trying to, reduce your life expenses?
Interesting. Wow, the perception at the time was, I think guys were really, really shocked. I think because even when I was in architecture, I was really, really passionate about it, and I was saying I sort of like did well on it. So guys were really surprised that, when you're that guy, and guys were like, I could see you joining one of these really big farms and leading it in the next 10 to 15 years, and then that person tells you they've quit to go do something else. Like, guys were really, really surprised. Like, it didn't make sense at all. Actually, my folks were very unhappy. Uncles tried to talk to me. Like, even where I was working, they were like, man, we'll give you a year. If it doesn't work out, you can come back. Right? They couldn't really believe that was a decision that I'd made. So it was guys were really, really surprised. It felt, a bit irresponsible, because also it was 6 years in architecture, which is a long time. So it was really tough, and we sort of like went into hermit mode. So even with the car, like I remember, like there was now, of course, zero salary. Business is not making any revenue, so we'd be fueling like even like 300 shillings to just drive from home to work, which was now Korea's bedroom. It was extremely tough, and many guys were like, I don't know what happened to you. So sort of like disappeared for like 6 months, and just focus on building. But along that time, a lot of reading would just really encourage us. And there's a quote I saw that time, which was, it only takes 6 months to change your life. Actually, like a year is very long. Many people don't realize this. You can really turn your life around. So if you just focus on building a particular skill for 6 months, you'll actually be good at it. And the other 6 months, you can start reaping the benefits of that thing you sort of like started focusing on. So what happened then was, after 6 months, I even forgot that I'd done architecture. I was telling guys, even if you give me the best project in Kenya to do right now, I won't do it. Because I sort of believe if you have a safety net, then you won't really go all in on something. So it seemed very responsible at the time, but the dividends started paying off, but they paid off like even much, much, much later than we anticipated.
Yeah. Okay. What does it take? Because, you've talked about, moving from architecture to get into coding and all of that, and said, it took a year and a half, and it sounds very flowery and, very inspirational story, narrative driven. But what does it actually take? What did it actually take for you to build this skill in the ability to code? What, on a very realistic level, did it look like, and did it require from you to build this skill set? Looking at, again, you're coming literally from the architecture world, you're coming now into the finance space, whereas the project draws from elements of your architecture and building and real estate development, but really now you're looking at the financial side of things. So what did it physically take and reality take to build that skill set? What did it look like?
Yeah, it was extremely difficult. I'd say it was a hard transition, but I think we had the energy and the drive to do it. So a typical day was, number one, we'd work like 16 hours, because if you think about it, you're basically behind, because we didn't do computer science, we don't know how to code, and we don't understand any finance. So we'd get to the office between 7 and 8 a.m. and we'd work all the way till 10. So what we did was, we'd come up with the designs of like what we wanted to build, and then sort of like figure out how do we code this. And this begins from everything from like, okay, how do we create a page where someone can sign in? That's like number one. We didn't even know that's like a thing, so we have to know how to do that. So okay, how are you going to store this data? So we'd literally like spend maybe like the first morning designing what we want to do, because at least we understood design, we can design a homepage and stuff. And then we'd spend the afternoon on YouTube, on Udemy, on Lida.com, buying courses and viewing courses on like how to code, right? So we'd spend maybe like 6 hours on that. And then the last 6 hours was we would now learn the finance part of it. So how do you do scenario analysis? How do you do financial forecasting? What is a DCF? What are discounted cash flows? All these things. So we learned those things in the evening. And we sort of like slowly started understanding how these things work. So what then we did after that was we built like a design, a prototype showing how things look, and it was very, very convincing. So we'd actually think it works. So we'd go to like someone who works in a bank, just family members. You ask who works in credit. You'll find like one or two people who work in credit, and then you would ask them, if you were to give you guys this thing, like, would it actually solve your problem? This is what we think it can solve. And then what started happening is they started giving us, advice and guidance on like, okay, this is how we actually do it. It doesn't do so well. You can probably try this. And then later on, one of the people we were working with gave us an Excel that showed us like how ideally the bank does this, but the manual way. So we now started working to digitize that entire Excel experience. So by that time, we were like 6 months in. But the early days, it was a lot of lynda.com and YouTube, Udemy, just learning how to code, learning finance. There's those Indian software developers who teach you how to deploy an app. We even had a plant in the office that we named Naveen after the Indian who actually taught us how to code. So like this is like paying homage to the videos we were watching before.
Okay. So if once you get your $80,000, what do you guys do with it?
Of course, we had to give ourselves a reward for sure. We were still young. So I got a car, I think updated and got another one.
Sold the Golf, bought
another one. Yeah, but no, the one I actually wanted.
Okay.
Yeah, so at least just to sort of like reward ourselves.
Did you split it down the middle? Was it like 40,000?
Yeah, we split it down the middle.
Okay.
We split it down the middle. Of course, you tell your mom, Mom, we actually made it. Now look at all this money. Let me even send you something. So I was extremely happy. They're seeing the dividend of like all that hard work. And then we now started building Chpter full time. So there was a lot of things which sort of like can prevent you from building something you want to build later on, like sort of like AWS costs, like hosting costs. They can go to like $2,000. But that time we were not so experienced, so we were probably using it the wrong way and it was expensive. So we sort of like started like self-funding. And we had now a little bit more money to visit customers. We didn't have to worry about money for some time, and we could just go back now into building and build what we actually wanted to build. So by this time we actually really experienced. We built the first version of what Chpter is today in about 6 weeks. And in like 8 weeks we got our first customer. And that was almost a religious experience for us. So around December 2021, we got our first customer. They were called, it's a burger joint. It was selling burgers online. And we assisted them to be able to accept payments through some of the checkout links we built initially. And there was this one day, I think it was the 17th of November, where we made 23 shillings. I kid you not, 23 shillings in payment processing fee. And we were like, man, I think we're actually going to become rich now. Like, it was like the best 23 shillings we ever made. Because we could really see now we created something from scratch that people are using, and it's starting to generate revenue. The first one we made was sort of like an acquisition. But this one we felt like, damn, we just need to get maybe 100 more people, and that can be like, 2,000 shillings, then 20,000 shillings, etc. So I think that was one of the aha moments we really saw.
Okay. And sorry to take you back, but so you're saying of the $40,000 that you took home, there's zero you invested. You bought the car.
Yeah.
Spent stuff like, the family.
Yeah.
And then went straight into Chpter.
Yeah, we straight into
Chpter. There's nothing you invested in, there's nothing you saved, there's nothing you...
Yeah, let's put it all back into the business. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So then between that point, between when you make this first 23 shillings for Chpter to where you are now, where I don't know if this information is out there, but when you have a wedding ring, to where you're married now, and essentially many people assume that with marriage is some sort of stability. You've been able to raise it $1 million for Chpter. What are the I mean, what would you say are like three significant things financially that happened or that have happened from that first 23 shillings you make
Yeah, yeah.
to where you've got to now?
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from that 23 shillings, that's when we really got in business. I think we had some really good momentum after that. So after that 23 shilling point, we noticed, okay, we can be able to acquire more customers onto Chpter. So the first version of Chpter was assisting businesses to accept payments online through payment links. So they can create a payment link. So instead of asking what's the payment information, all these things, you can just share a link and someone can pay easily. So this later evolved into you can pay directly on WhatsApp, etc. So in a matter of maybe 6 weeks, we grinded it out and were able to get to about 50 customers. So the payments volume started increasing. And then this was now early 2022. We then raised our first round of financing of venture capital from angel investors. So that was a huge show of faith. It was a huge booster of morale. And we just felt like, damn, okay, this thing is really starting to work. So we raised about $100,000 in like a month. So this was like crazy amounts of money to us at that time. You can imagine coming from a year where you're not making any revenue to like you've raised like ideally now like 13 million shillings on the bank account. So it was really profound. So that's one thing which gave us a lot of confidence to just continue building, and many investors just jumped on and started believing in us. I'd say that's milestone one. Milestone two was more people started joining Chpter, right? So many guys would see just the passion that we are putting into it. You know, we came from architecture, we're building in tech now. So many people actually started joining even without a salary. They can be like, okay, I like what you guys are building. I think this is going to become really big. Let me just come and work with you guys. So people started joining the cause. So the team was able to grow from just Kuri and myself to now just like 3 other people, and you now start having that more responsibility because there's a team you're leading. So I'd say that was like the second like major shift. And I'd say like the third one was, okay, seeing now we've raised venture funding, we've gotten a team. Okay, how can we just make this a stable business? So really started working on just getting more customers, raising more funding, so that we can be able to actually build, a business that has sort of like some structures. So there's a certain salary everyone is able to get. We're able to move into like an office and just started operating more as a real business and less of a garage business
Right.
that was in Courier's room at the time. So this is a journey we've been on through that time, and now the team has really grown. We're about 20 now in 3 markets: Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. And we've been able to grow from the 50 customers we had at the time all the way to now we're at about 1,000.
Okay. What's been first of all, when do you draw your first salary from Chpter? Is it when you get the angel investors when they come in? Is that when you get your
Yes, I
first?
think it was like mid 2022. Yeah,
Okay.
that's when
So
we
that's
were
when you
able-
start taking a regular salary from.
Yeah,
And how did you
yeah.
guys determine what that was going to be?
Man, we really, how can I say it? We really wanted to keep everything back in the business. So even at this time, we started paying ourselves something like $500, so that all the money can still stay in the business. So it was still tough days.
Yeah.
We've raised some cash, but we were not really compensating ourselves back to the level of how we were in architecture before. That only came like maybe I'd say like a year later, towards the end of 2023.
Okay. And are you guys profitable now?
So we're not profitable now, but we feel we've looked at the projections, how much we're growing and how much we're burning every month,
Yeah.
and we project will be profitable by around November next year.
Okay.
And it's been a big journey of growth, and we've actually seen a lot of growth has been not only here in Kenya, but in South Africa and Nigeria. So we're trying to see how we can position the business for global growth, because many customers also coming from markets outside Kenya.
Okay. maybe as we're sort of just winding down, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the cost of acquiring customers, right? Because it seems like that's like your secret sauce, the thing that has allowed you to grow from the first 3 shillings to 50 to then 100 to now 1,000. And I'm predicting that even by November, by you saying achieving profitability by November next year has a direct customer acquisition amount, I'm sure. What's that process been like?
Yeah, I think acquiring customers is something you really have to invest in here in Kenya, and actually not just acquiring, but educating the customers. So we've seen someone knows, okay, like I use WhatsApp every day as a business, but like why should I get a WhatsApp that I need to pay for? Right? So like there's a lot of education we need to do to show them that when you're using WhatsApp for business, it's a bit different because you can get, more analytics on who are your customers, are they clicking on your links, you can send them campaigns, you can be able to have them check out on WhatsApp. So you have to do a lot of education and actually show businesses they can benefit on WhatsApp or Instagram that is now powered by Chpter. So the cost of acquisition initially was really high. I'd say it was about maybe $80 to acquire a customer because we'd have to use like sales resources to get a customer. So we'd have to get a member of our sales team to be able to go and talk to a customer and ideally acquire them. So, and this would take somewhere like from 3 days to like 2 weeks for a customer to actually go live on Chpter. So it was around $80, but throughout this year, we've noticed we can be able to reduce that cost by doing customer acquisition one-to-many as opposed to one-to-one.
Yeah.
So what you're doing now is like we're doing things like webinars. So in these webinars, you'll have like maybe 100 people sign up. And in this webinar, it's not just about sign up for the webinar. And in that webinar, we just aim to actually provide real value. So like, how can you as a business maybe do better marketing? How can you as a business see more success in your campaigns? How can you close more customers with less resources? So we teach businesses how to do these things. And in between, we show them how Chpter can also power their growth to be able to just increase the revenue they're able to make. So that's been able to get our CAC down from $80 all the way to something like $5. Awesome. And you can see surges of like, 10, 15, 20 people signing up in a day.
Yeah.
So that's really how we've been able to do it. And it's something we'll scale through more in 2025.
Okay, interesting. Last question. Right now, so you're 29. I mean, we're having a chat with your wife beforehand, and we're asking you what you're doing for Christmas, and you said nothing. You guys are your family now. You're not hanging out with wider family. What's your financial position now, separate from Chpter? Like you as a 29-year-old married man right now, where is your money at? Where are your investments at right now?
Yeah, I think good question. Investing is something I've really picked up lately. I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. So there's two things we are sort of like working on a family as a family to like bolster our financial position. Number one is still being on the attack, and that's by building a business. So my wife has started a business called Batch and Peak, which makes outdoor climbing, hiking, and camping gear. So something like a North Face in Patagonia. And this is, I think, one of the best ways to make money is just by building a business. And building a business is, of course, providing value, meeting a market need, but also it's creating an engine that will generate X amount of cash. And the longer you stay in business, the bigger it grows. So that's one way. The second one is, of course, Chpter, which is what we're doing. The third one is investing. I think just being in the tech space, you can be able to see some really good companies that can grow big in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
So now companies like, of course, Tesla, there's Palantir, there's just S&P 500, which returns at least 11% every year. So we've been able to, every month, there's something we send out to some of this, we buy shares to some of these companies. And, just wait on the compounding effect. It's the eighth wonder of the world. Yeah. So just the longer you're at it, the more the money will continue to grow. So I'd say investing, building a business is just the two ways where we're sort of like...
Okay. So in terms of the traditional forms of finance management or the saving side of things. You're similar to Tesh in like, if I want to make wealth, I'll invest in businesses. Like I will
Yeah.
spend the money. You don't keep the money per se.
I think, money is supposed to be working.
Yeah.
Money is meant to be working. But of course, you don't want all the money to be tied up in assets where you can't liquidate easily.
Yeah.
So instead of saving in a bank account, we save on an MMF. So at least there's a certain return that you can be able to get. And there are safer options of investing, of course, like the S&P.
Yeah.
And it's still really easy to like liquidate, sell
Yeah.
some shares to get some money back. So where we put like the savings and the emergency fund is in the MMF.
Okay.
And then a lot of that we want to be either in the business or in stocks.
Okay. Do you think whatever you're paying yourself now as a salary is commensurate to the value you bring to your business? Or do you think you're being paid at your rate?
No, not really.
Not
I
yet.
think it's still, not yet. I think a lot of, we want a lot of the capital we have to still go back into the business. Up until the point where it's profitable, then we can be able to even demand more from the business. But for now, we're just plowing it back into the business. So there's team members who are actually earning more than us, way more.
Yeah.
But we're okay with that because we really just want the business to grow.
Okay. Thanks for coming on, Mark. Thanks for giving us that insight and your fascinating story. I see why Tesh said your story is not, I guess, a regular person's story. So thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing your financial journey and your and your nuggets. I liked a couple of things that you said. I've definitely learned a thing or two as always. So of course we're in 2025 now. So we have exciting things coming on for Financially Incorrect this year. So please look out on our social media pages to be able to see any of that. Again, thanks for coming on, Mark. And we will see you guys next Friday on the next episode of Financially Incorrect.
Thank you.